Welcome back, everybody. My name is Ben from the Ben and Bev channel. Today we're going to be talking about Loki episode 3, Lamentis.
I've seen the first 2 episodes of Loki. I would go ahead and watch those on Disney Plus, or go ahead and check out the breakdown and reviews over here on the playlist to my left.
This week's episode kicks off with Loki stuck in other Loki's plan,
Lady Loki's plan?
We find out later in the episode she's going by Sylvie, so we're just going to call her that.
which sends him right back to the TVA on her tail as she's taking out the various Minutemen in the hallway in a quick and violent fashion. Intro scene to the episode is this interesting scene where it shows Lady Loki inside of C-20's mind in one of her old memories. Definitely indicates something further about the TVA and what we need to understand about them, which they go into later on in the episode as well. She acts as her friend and just tries to build this trust while consistently changing the memory of the various beach houses and vacation homes that they're at.
And then we pick up where we left off last week.
What's super intriguing about this is when it kicks off, she tries to use her powers and doesn't realize that they're not going to work when she's inside of the TVA. Which is interesting to see, especially since it would be her first mistake in this plan since we started watching her in action. But after vaporizing most of the guards with her own weapons and ending up at the golden elevator shaft, she ends up getting held up by our variant of the Loki. At the end of their confrontation, the head of the TVA and her guards show up fully armed, ready to fight. Lady Loki takes our Loki hostage and puts a sword to his throat, and Loki, knowing that the TVA doesn't really care if he lives or dies, decides to send them both through a portal wherever they're going.
Remember, Loki, we're going to apocalypse events.
Not good.
Welcome to Lamentis, a planet on its first year about to be destroyed by a moon that's slowly impacting into the atmosphere.
I know I'm harping, but this is such a cool landscape to have an episode with it. A planet that's dying because a moon is crashing into it. I mean, you thought Titan was cool. This place is even crazier, especially with the color scheme of that purple, green, and cyan aesthetic. Oh, good stuff. Visually, just so tasty. It almost looks a little bit like that Guardian city that Yondu stays at, but a lot less wintry and barren, more bright and colorful, but not quite to the level of Mbatha-Raw on Earth, in a more surreal cosmic way. Almost like Vormir. And it makes me wonder if this is actually the scene that I thought was Vormir in the trailer, and he was actually talking to Sophia Di Martino and not
Natasha Romanoff.
Also appears to be some type of weird, strange mining planet where everyone works and works and works and the rich get to take all of their money. Basically indentured servitude or probably even slavery, and they really dig into that. And I noticed they did that in Pompeii as well. They dig into the terror of this apocalypse setting. Though this one is on a fictitious planet, still get that immense sense of dread, almost like in the movie Titanic when you see the rich getting onto the boats before anyone else does. The planet looks really trippy, by the way. It's super purple, blue, and green. I don't know what exactly it is that they're harvesting or mining there, but there's a small city hub, but other than that, when Loki's get there, it's fairly abandoned. There's just various asteroids showering down and the world's ending, and the two of them begin arguing and are angry about their situation and begin questioning each other's legitimacy to who they are and what their memories are and what the differences are between them. With Sylvie, the maybe variant, always trying to fight Loki because she doesn't trust him and she just wants to complete her years in development plan, and our Loki variant opting for peace because he wants to weasel his way out of this situation, and of course probably has a scheme on the underneath to lend himself the upper hand.
The way these two act so similarly while also slightly different really shows what it would happen if Loki met himself. Because the two would never truly trust each other because they're always trying to outwit one another with their own secret plan, their own scheme, never admitting to the other being superior, and always leading to somewhat of a conflict, despite the good nature in both of them hiding underneath all the mischief and madness.
After finding out about an arc that's going to be leaving the planet, they decide that it has enough energy to power their telepalm.
Telepalm? I don't remember really what they're called. It's some type of little iPad thing. It's what the TVA has that sends them to the various places in the timeline.
It's out of battery, and they need power. And Loki won't give it to her. The little thing where he teleports it away. And for some reason she doesn't really understand that, which is another reason Loki really questions her and her abilities. So when they get to this town, it's completely abandoned except for this old lady hiding in her little trailer out in the middle of nowhere who shoots both of them in the chest no matter what they do to try and convince her otherwise. But she's basically just waiting it out because she knows she can't escape and there's no way they can get on the Ark. And she also refers to them as devils, which occurred to me if someone had never seen either of them or their powers before and both of them came walking across this post-apocalyptic landscape, maybe they think they're one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse or something. That'd be horrifying. As the two try and scheme, they also really try and battle for control as they both fail and succeed at the same time on getting aboard the ship that goes to the Ark. Aboard, they take a park at the bar and actually have a moment to sit down and talk for a moment, actually bringing a really strong set of dialogue where the two are comparing their memories and how their childhoods were very different, ranging from their different uses of magic, and of course with Lady Loki being more withdrawn and not revealing much about her own history except little vague hints at her past, including the fact that she doesn't really remember much of her mother, and they kind of bond over this as Loki begins describing his childhood with his mother and how that's who really pushed him to learn magic. And within this, they also have that conversation about their internal displacement when it comes to finding a partner, whichever type of partner that may be. Neither one of them really finds an attachment to them, using love as more of a means of mischief and pain rather than pleasure or happiness.
And yes, you heard that right.
Both types of partners for both of these characters, and that really shouldn't be surprising if you think about it because they're both shape-shifting gods of mischief.
You're an eternal being who has no bounds in what you look like or in your appearance.
There's also a great scene where Loki writes down one of Sylvie's quotes about love and what it is. I'm going blank on what it is at the moment, but it's a really good quote.
I'm really enjoying director Kate Herron's handle of emotion in all of these episodes. Whether we're having comedy, action, or destruction is the focus of the superhero narrative. There's always a deep tug on the dialogue between the characters. In last week's episode, that scene where Loki was just reading the report on Asgard about how it was total planetary destruction, with the population count of people that couldn't get off the planet listed, you saw the tear in his eye, and the soundtrack changes. That piece that's in Ragnarok of the Thor soundtrack, and it just hugs your heartstrings as you see that tear form in Loki's eye, very, very close up and blurry around the edges. You only see his pupil in the iris. As well as the scene at the beginning of this week's episode where she's inside of C20's head. We get to see the emotional manipulation that Sylvie's character is capable of. So when the two Lokis are interacting, they're picking each other apart. They're both getting very open, and their various wounds and bad memories are coming out despite them trying to hide them within themselves. Because though they are the same, they are slightly different. Apparently, two gods of mischief work more like Mentos and Diet Coke.
Then we get a scene where she falls asleep at the bar and Loki begins to drink. When she awakes, he is serenading the rich folk and leading them in a song that really channels Merry and Pippin to Lord of the Rings. He's dancing around, smashing glasses, talking about poor, drunken rambling. Beautiful voice too, by the way. Tom Hiddleston did a really great job with this singing. The scene begins to take a turn for the intense as Sylvie begins to let on to something going on behind the scenes as we see characters leave the room and give strange looks to the now very, very, very drunk Loki. We do get this really cool drunken brawl where they're both being rather cruel with beating up these guards who have a doomed cause and are going somewhere that's probably just going to kill them anyways.
Once again, the two Lokis really revel in this misery and pain that they inflict on others, and they're not shy on showing that to us because these people are going to be dying anyways.
A fight that ends all in vain though because Loki is too drunk and goes flying out the window and destroys the telepad as well. Obviously, Sylvie's not too happy with Loki destroying their one way of not being extinct with the rest of the society at the end of 2077 on
Lamentis.
The two begin to have a really explosive, quite literally, argument across this landscape as it's all being devastated and the Earth begins exploding more and more. I saw the gravity-shifting meteors that were hitting the ground earlier, which is definitely a big dose of foreshadowing for later. Things that hit the ground and it looks like they refract backwards and explode like something out of the movie Tenet. But as the two contemplate on their doom and
As Loki throws in one more jab about how Sylvie lacks ambition,
he gets the bright idea to hijack the Ark and fly it off the planet because with these two Lokis on the ship, maybe we can change history.
what's that gonna do to the timeline?
So it's at this point I realized that the last two episodes are also about 1/3 a disaster movie with all of that chaos and carnage coming to a head as the planet begins to enter the atmosphere in the last hours of the planet's life. Loki and Sylvie go bolting, having to fight multiple sets of guards as they're beating up all the civilians trying to rush onto the Ark. The Ark's trying to take off, meteors raining down. There's this cool scene where they're fighting in a ramen shop. It's a really good fight scene. The camera angle kind of just sweeps through the corner store and then out the other side, leading to a destructive earthquake sequence with both of them running through the street as each exit begins to get blocked by falling skyscrapers and pieces of a moon.
It's right here we see the weird Tenet thing happen.
This skyscraper falls directly on top of both of the Lokis, and I didn't think either one of them did anything to stop it from happening, but basically it fell almost to our variant Loki's face, and then it just bounced back up the way it came and exploded. They never explained it further, and I honestly wondered for a second if it was just a mess up on the CGI, or if I saw something right, or if it was played backwards. It was really confusing for a second, though. It really threw me for a whirl in the middle of this chaotic scene. And as they run through that last alleyway, and they see the Ark right in front of them, a huge chunk of the moon shows up. Blows right through it. All the guards stop beating up the civilians, and they all just look in awe and terror as the Ark explodes, and you hear a bunch of screaming and chaos. Sylvie just runs off, and Loki just sits there and stares at their last chance of hope. And that's the end of the episode. Another cliffhanger. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm loving this.
This is good stuff.
Every week sends you in a completely different place with no idea where you're going to be heading afterwards or if you're even going to be continuing. Leaving that emotion also at an all-time high because you're in a constant state of turmoil trying to figure out how the show's trying to make you feel. I also wanted to point out that I think this week had a lot less comedy and it was all just emotion. And while there was jokes laced throughout as they argued, mainly just serious issues of if the two can trust each other, especially since they're both gods of mischief, or if really either of them are. This is what I wanted from Marvel Television, these crazy stories of these odd characters stuck together on a planet that's going to be completely destroyed in the next few minutes.
What other universe can you do this in?
Completely insane. The special effects are on point. There's parts where my TV was kind of lagging out because the amount of special effects they were using were so high that the pixels couldn't catch up through the stream. This is the best episode so far. I can't wait for next week. I also have absolutely no idea where this is going. With only 3 episodes left, really knows. I don't think everything's going to be getting resolved within this season, and probably won't be resolved for a while. I have a feeling this is actually going to be sparking the whole multiverse of madness thing that's going to be taking over the MCU. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for next week's episode of Loki, as well as the upcoming films you should try and Ramen Days segments. Please leave a comment below, and we'll see you next time. Ben and Bev, out.